The lion was young, barely past cubhood, but already marked by struggle. His name was Zhao. He walked with a limp from a wound that never quite healed. His pride had left him behind. Not out of cruelty, but instinct. In the wild, weakness is a danger, and the others couldn't afford it. So Zhao wandered the plains alone, hungry, cautious, and always watching his back. The hyena, older and vicious, had been watching too. Xin was no ordinary scavenger. He led a small, brutal pack, and they had a reputation. Not for cunning, not for stealing scraps, but for killing wounded lions. Xin didn't believe in luck. He believed in timing, in striking when no one expected it, and Zhao was perfect prey, isolated, limping, and small. That morning, Xin waited for Zhao to fall asleep. Under a thin tree, Zhao's breathing was shallow. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. Xin's pack circled him silently, their movements precise. But Xin didn't rush. He wanted to enjoy this. The power of taking down a lion, even a weak one, with no backup. As Xin stepped closer, Zhao's eyes opened. Panic. He struggled to his feet, legs shaking, teeth bared. He tried to roar, but it came out like a dry cough. Xin laughed. It was more a high-pitched yelp, mockery in sound form. "You still think you're a lion?" he sneered. Zhao backed away, limping faster now, eyes darting. He wasn't looking to fight. He just wanted to survive. But the circle was tight. Too tight. Xin lunged. Zhao tried to dodge, but Xin caught his flank, biting deep. Blood. Zhao screamed, a sound so raw it made even the younger hyenas pause. That's when the ground trembled. Xin looked up, annoyed. He thought maybe it was thunder, but the sky was clear. Another tremor. Then a noise. Low, deep, too rhythmic to be natural. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Xin turned and saw them. First one, then two, then a third. Elephants. 3 of them. Enormous, quiet, focused. The lead one was an old matriarch named Lumo. Her tusks were worn. Her eyes calm but sharp. She didn't charge. She didn't trumpet. She just walked toward Xin like she was walking through mist. Xin froze. Elephants rarely bothered with hyenas unless provoked. He hadn't touched them, hadn't crossed their path. Why were they coming? Lumo's gaze moved from Xin to Zhao. Her steps didn't slow. She walked right between them and stopped, standing tall over the trembling lion. Xin growled low. "This isn't your business." Lumo didn't answer. Another elephant, younger but still towering, stepped forward beside her, and then a third. No sound, no threat, just presence. Xin's pack shrank back. Even they understood what this meant. These weren't scared elephants. They were making a statement. Xin held his ground a moment longer, debating, but Lumo's eyes met his again, eyes that had seen many more suns, eyes that weren't afraid. He stepped back, then another step, and finally turned. His pack followed, silent. Zhao collapsed. The bleeding hadn't stopped. His breath was weak, but he was alive, and Lumo was still there, standing watch over him. Slowly, she bent her massive head down and touched his shoulder gently with her trunk. Not pushing, not nudging, just touching, reassuring. Zhao flinched at first, then relaxed. No one had touched him like that since his mother. Lumo stood there for hours. No sound, no movement, just presence, watching over the weakest lion in the land. Zhao drifted in and out of consciousness, his body aching, his breath shallow. Every movement felt like fire across his ribs. But in those flickers of awareness, something strange kept happening. He wasn't alone. Every time he opened his eyes, the shadow of Lumo hovered nearby, unmoving. The 2 younger elephants took turns standing near her side, watching everything around them with quiet attention. Lumo didn't treat him like prey. She didn't treat him like a nuisance either. She treated him like he mattered. Zhao didn't understand why. He was a lion, a predator, and yet here she was, an elephant, the largest creature on the land, guarding him like he was one of her own calves. When the sun began to dip, the elephants finally moved, but they didn't leave. Instead, Lumo took a step forward and gently slid her trunk under Zhao's frail body. Not to lift him, just to encourage. Just enough pressure to make him stir. Zhao tried to get up, wincing and groaning. His legs trembled again. He collapsed once more, but Lumo didn't give up. She tried again, brushing him with her trunk, this time supporting his chest slightly. It was enough. Zhao managed to stand. Barely. Then something even stranger happened. The younger elephant on Lumo's right, a tall, lean bull named Tembo, turned and began walking slowly ahead. Lumo stayed beside Zhao. The third elephant followed behind. It wasn't a random movement. They were forming a path. Lumo gave Zhao another nudge. He didn't know why he followed, didn't know where they were going, but somehow it felt right. Every few steps, he stumbled, and every time he did, Lumo stopped and waited. Her patience was endless. No growl, no nudge, no judgment. Just quiet encouragement. Hours passed. Zhao lost track of time. All he knew was pain, exhaustion, and those quiet giants guiding him. They didn't speak. They didn't demand. They just walked, and they made sure he could keep walking too. Eventually, they stopped at a shallow stream. The water was slow and gentle. Easy to drink, easy to wade into. Lumo stepped aside and let Zhao collapse beside it. He drank. Slowly, painfully, but enough to cool his throat and wet his lips. Then something touched his back again. This time, it was Tembo, dropping a small bundle of wet grass and leaves near him. Elephants didn't eat meat. This wasn't food. It was something else. Some kind of salve, crushed with water. Lumo picked up the bundle with her trunk and softly dabbed it. On Zhao's wound, he winced, then relaxed. The sting was real, but the pain lessened. The bleeding had slowed. Zhao's eyes closed again, not from weakness this time, but comfort, safety. In the past, lions had taught him that strength meant standing alone, that pain was part of life, and the weak were always forgotten. But these, elephants, creatures he once feared, were showing him something else. Compassion wasn't weakness, and care wasn't pity. It was power, too. That night, the hyenas returned. Xin watched from the shadows, eyes burning. He had followed from a distance, waiting for the moment the elephants let their guard down. But when he saw the three giants, forming a triangle around the sleeping lion, he didn't dare step closer. He could hear them breathing. Calm. Watchful. Xin's lip curled. Fine, he muttered under his breath. Let the lion live, for now. But he didn't leave. He stayed at the edges, waiting. Because while Zhao had found protectors, the wild never forgot. Zhao woke to the soft vibrations of footsteps around him. Not the sharp, skittering kind of hyenas, but the slow, deliberate tread of elephants. His body ached less. The pain was still there, pulsing in waves, but it was bearable now. More than that, he didn't feel afraid. Lumo was still there. She stood in silence, eyes half closed, but her ears shifted every few seconds, always listening. Tembo and the other younger elephant, a quiet female named Sena, were nearby too. They weren't doing anything special, just grazing, walking, staying close. But Zhao could feel it in every breath. He mattered to them. It didn't. Makes sense. Lions and elephants didn't mix. In the animal world, boundaries were clear. And yet, these elephants had chosen to break that rule. Zhao didn't know what to do with that. He tried to stand. His legs trembled but didn't buckle this time. Lumo turned her head slightly, watching but not interfering. She let him test himself. With effort, Zhao limped to the water and drank again. It tasted sweeter now. Or maybe it was just that his throat wasn't raw anymore. He lay down nearby, head lifted, alert, healing. That's when Tembo walked toward him, slowly, carrying another bundle of leaves and grass. Zhao bristled slightly, instinct reacting before logic, but Tembo didn't flinch. He placed the herbs near Zhao and backed away. This time, Zhao understood. He dipped his nose toward it. The scent was strong, bitter, healing plants. His mother had used them once when he was younger, before she was gone, before everything fell apart. Zhao chewed the leaves slowly, and the bitterness didn't bother him. He swallowed and felt a strange warmth in his chest. Not physical warmth, but something else. Something he hadn't felt in so long. Then, for the first time in days, Zhao let himself close his eyes without fear. But not far away, Xin watched. He hadn't left. From the safety of the tall grass, he kept track of the lion, watched every movement, every interaction. The sight of Zhao being tended to by elephants turned Xin's stomach. Pathetic, he hissed to himself. His pride didn't let him forget. He was a hyena who had challenged lions and won. Letting Zhao go would look weak, and weakness wasn't allowed in Xin's world. But attacking now? That wasn't an option either, not with the elephant circling, so he waited. He would wait as long as it took, because sooner or later they'd leave. Elephants didn't stay, and once they were gone, Zhao was his again. But something began to shift. Days passed. Zhao stood longer, walked farther, ate more. Every morning the elephants brought him something. Leaves, herbs, bark soaked in water. Not lion food, but healing things. Useful things. They didn't treat him like a predator. They treated him like a broken thing worth fixing. And slowly he began to believe it too. One morning, as he stood taller and straighter, Zhao saw something in Lumo's eyes. Not pity, not worry, pride. That shook him more than any pain he'd felt. He wasn't their kind, but they saw something in him worth saving. And maybe, just maybe, that meant he could be something again. He didn't know what his future looked like. His pride was gone. The land was dangerous. Xin was still out there. But Zhao had survived the worst. Not alone, not by being strong, but by accepting help. That truth stayed with him. And far in the grass, Xin licked his lips, watching the lion grow stronger, and smiled to himself, because even healing lions bleed. By the end of the 7th day, Zhao could walk without falling. His limp was still there, but the sharp edge of pain had dulled to a throb. He felt hunger again, not the kind that gnawed like fire, but a real craving, a sign of life coming back. He paced slowly near the stream, muscles stiff but moving. Lumo watched him with the same quiet attention she always had. She didn't hover. She didn't press. She just stood, always present, like the trunk of a great tree, unmoving but holding everything together. Tembo had grown more relaxed. He wandered off sometimes, not far, but far enough to show trust. Sena would graze while keeping one eye on Zhao, as if silently saying, "You're still part of this." They had accepted him in their circle. No words, no ceremonies, just action. And Zhao had changed. He still flinched at sudden movements. Still looked over his shoulder more than necessary. But something inside him had settled. He wasn't just trying to survive anymore. He was beginning to want something more. But Xin had been patient. Too patient. The hyena had not forgotten the humiliation. His pack had questioned him. "Why did you back off?" they whispered. "Why not finish him?" Xin ignored them, but their eyes spoke doubt. He didn't just want revenge now. He needed to prove he hadn't gone soft. So, that morning, Xin made his move. It began with a scream, not from Zhao, but from another lion. Young, desperate, Zhao's ears perked up instantly. He turned toward the sound. The elephants stopped too, heads lifting, ears wide. Another scream, closer this time, a lion cub. Zhao's chest tightened. He looked at Lumo. Her eyes didn't blink. She'd heard it too, and without hesitation, she stepped forward. The 3 elephants began moving, not slowly like they usually did, but fast, controlled, powerful steps that sent vibrations through the earth. Zhao followed, his legs shaky but determined. He didn't know why the scream had shaken him so much until they got close. At the edge of a dry hill, in a dip between rocks, a young lion cub lay trapped. His leg was pinned under a fallen branch. Blood stained the ground around him, and standing over him, Zin. Zin looked up, grin spreading slowly. "He screamed better than I thought," he said casually, dragging his paw across the cub's back. "You came faster than I expected." Zhao froze. The cub, barely older than he'd been when he first limped alone, looked up at him with wild, terrified eyes. It was a trap. Zin had set it perfectly, lured them out. And now, Zin's full pack began to appear from the rocks and grass. Not 2 or 3, but 8. All eyes on Zhao. The elephants were big, yes, but outnumbered, outpositioned. Zin's eyes locked on Zhao. "You think hiding behind them makes you untouchable," he snarled. "You're still weak, still broken, and now you're dragging them into your mess." Zhao's breathing quickened. He glanced at Lumo. She didn't flinch, didn't move. She simply stepped forward, placing herself between the cub and the hyenas. Zin laughed. "You protect him like he's one of yours. He's not. You're wasting your strength." But Lumo didn't answer with words. She answered with a sound Zhao had never heard from her before. A deep, rumbling growl, not angry, not fearful, but final, a warning. And then Zhao did something even he didn't expect. He stepped forward, past Lumo, past Sina. His body was still fragile. His legs still carried pain. But his eyes locked on Zin with something new. Conviction. "This ends now," Zhao said, voice low but steady. Zin tilted his head, amused. "You going to fight me, cub?" "No," Zhao said, stepping even closer. "I'm going to show you something. You'll never understand." And he roared. Not a cough, not a wheeze. A real roar. Behind him, the elephants didn't move. They didn't need to. Zhao wasn't asking for protection anymore. He was demanding respect. Zin didn't flinch. He didn't need to. He had his pack. Zhao was still just one lion, limping and thin. A roar didn't change that. Power wasn't noise. It was blood. Zin had made a career out of tearing through louder threats than this. But something in Zhao's eyes stopped him for a breath too long. There was no panic this time. No begging, just fire, controlled. Dangerous. Zin snarled. "You think you've got something now? Because you've got some elephants standing behind you? They'll leave, eventually. And when they do, I'll be there, like I always am, waiting." Stepped closer to the cub, pressing his paw harder into the little lion's neck. Zhao didn't move. Tembo shifted behind him, trunk curling tightly. Sina angled her body protectively toward the cub. And Lumo didn't move at all, because she didn't need to. Zin's pack was circling now, confident in their numbers. Hyenas yipped and cackled, amped up by the tension. They had the numbers, the advantage, the plan, but they didn't have unity. Zhao stepped forward again, inching toward Zin. He didn't bare his teeth. He didn't growl. He just kept walking, slow and steady. Zin's brow furrowed. "You're bluffing," he hissed. "No," Zhao said, voice calm. "I'm remembering." "Remembering what?" "That I'm not weak because I was broken," Zhao replied. "I'm stronger because I healed." Zin's snarl faltered for the first time, and that hesitation changed everything. Lumo moved. She didn't charge. She didn't stomp. She simply walked forward, massive, deliberate, like a mountain deciding to change position. The other 2 elephants followed. Zin barked, "Hold the line!" But his voice cracked at the end. Hyenas don't hold lines. They scatter. They run when things stop making sense. One of Zin's pack bolted, then another, and suddenly the circle was broken. Zin's eyes widened. "No, wait." But it was too late. Tembo reached the trapped cub and used his trunk to gently pull the branch off his leg. The cub yelped in pain, but he was free. Zhao stood over him now, every muscle in his body trembling. He looked Zin in the eye. "This is what strength looks like," he said. Zin's lip curled. He wanted to say something clever, something biting, but he had nothing, because the game was over. He turned and ran. Not far, not fast, just away. Zhao didn't chase. There was no need. The pack was gone. The danger had passed. And the cub, shaky and terrified, looked up at Zhao with the kind of wide-eyed trust that cuts deeper than any wound. Zhao didn't know what to say. So he did what the elephants had done for him. He stayed. Tembo gently helped the cub to his feet, and Sena stood guard at his side. Lumo circled back, her gaze falling on Zhao for a long, still moment. She gave a slow nod. Not a command, not approval, just acknowledgement. Zhao had done more than survive. He had led. Not like a lion trying to prove he was still fierce, but like someone who understood what it meant to be broken and still stand anyway. The cub nuzzled into Zhao's side, small body trembling, and Zhao, for the first time in what felt like forever, didn't feel alone. The cub's name was Kifo. He didn't say it at first. He was too shaken, too quiet. But over the next few days, as the elephant stayed and Zhao remained at his side, the fear started to melt from his eyes. Kifo didn't ask many questions. He just followed Zhao everywhere, copying his walk, his posture, even the way he drank, from the stream. He limped a little from the injury to his leg, but it wasn't bad. Nothing like what Zhao had endured. Still, they both moved like survivors. Cautious, always watching, but alive. Zhao didn't know how to be a guardian. He'd never had someone to protect since his mother died. But somehow, with Kifo trailing behind him, it felt natural. Like this was what all the pain had been leading toward. One evening, as the sky dimmed, Zhao caught his own reflection in the water. The scars were still there. His body was still lean. But his eyes were different now. Not just older, but clearer. He didn't look like a victim anymore. He looked like someone with a reason to fight. That night, after Kifo fell asleep beside him, Zhao walked to Lumo. She stood under a tree, unmoving as always, but her eyes tracked his approach. Zhao bowed his head slightly, not as a subject, but as a son might, full of respect. "I don't know why you helped me," he said softly, "but thank you." Lumo didn't respond, at least not in words, but she lowered her head and gently rested her trunk against his shoulder for a moment. It wasn't affection, exactly. It was understanding. She had seen something in him when no one else had. He walked back slowly, heart heavy in the best way. And as he settled next to Kifo, the cub stirred. "You're not scared of anything," Kifo mumbled, half asleep. Zhao almost laughed. "I'm scared of everything," he replied. Kifo blinked at him, confused. "But you stood in front of the hyenas." "I had help," Zhao said, "and I had a reason." The cub thought about that, then nodded, satisfied, and went back to sleep. The next morning, the elephants began to move. It wasn't sudden, and it wasn't goodbye. Lumo simply looked at Zhao for a long moment, then turned toward the open plain. She had done what she came to do. She had helped the fallen stand. Now it was time for her to go. Tembo and Sena followed. Tembo gave a short, playful nudge to Zhao as he passed, and Sena gave a gentle look toward Kifo, who waved a tiny paw in return. And just like that, they were gone. No fanfare. No promises. Just silence and fading footsteps. Zhao watched until they vanished over the hills. The space around him felt different now. Wider, sharper, but not empty, because they had left something behind, something more important than protection. They'd left belief. Kifo pressed close to him. "What do we do now?" the cub asked. Zhao looked out across the plain. "We make sure what they did for us. We do for someone else." Kifo didn't understand all of it, not yet, but he nodded anyway, because when you've been rescued, you don't forget the hands or trunks that lifted you. And somewhere, far away, Zin licked his wounds, fuming. He had lost. But his kind never stayed gone for long. Days turned into a quiet rhythm. Zhao and Kifo moved together now. Never far apart, never fully relaxed, but growing stronger. Zhao taught him how to listen for danger, how to watch the wind, how to trust his body. Kifo learned fast. He was still young, but he had already seen. Enough pain to know the world wasn't kind, but beside Zhao, he felt something close to safety. They hunted together, badly at first. Zhao was still recovering, and Kifo had never hunted alone before. Their first chase ended in nothing but dust. The second, worse. But the third, a slow, careful stalk of a young antelope separated from its group, gave them what they needed. It wasn't a feast, but it was food. Kifo beamed with pride, tail flicking, chest puffed out. Zhao watched him, a quiet smile on his face. Not for the kill, but for the fire in the cub's eyes. That fire reminded him of something he thought he'd lost. Hope. But the wild didn't let hope grow without challenge. And Zin hadn't disappeared. The scar on his side burned every time. He remembered the way Zhao had looked at him, that final moment before he ran. It had humiliated him in front of his pack. Worse, it had changed the story. The tale spreading through the land now wasn't about Zin, the hyena who killed lions. It was about Zhao, the weak lion who came back, and Zin couldn't live with that. So he watched, followed, waited. This time, he wouldn't attack outright. He would chip away, slowly. One morning, Zhao and Kifo returned from a failed hunt to find vultures circling their sleeping place. Blood stained the rocks near their stream. Not fresh, but not old either. They weren't sure what it meant, until Kifo found it. A chunk of antelope meat, half rotten, dragged into their space. An offering. A warning. Zhao stared at it a long time before dragging it away and burying it. He said nothing to Kifo. But he knew. Zin was nearby. That night they didn't sleep. They listened. Zhao stood while Kifo curled beside him, wide-eyed and quiet. Somewhere in the darkness, hyena laughter echoed. Far enough to not be a fight, close enough to be a threat. The next day, tracks appeared near their kill site. Hyena prints. One set, Zin's. A game of pressure. Mind games. Fear. Zhao didn't back down. He made sure Kifo slept each night, even if he didn't. He let the cub run and laugh and grow, even as he watched every shadow. He carried the weight alone, because he knew what it was like to feel hunted, and he refused to let Kifo carry that. But Kifo saw more than Zhao thought. He saw the tired eyes, the way Zhao flinched at sudden rustling. The nights Zhao didn't eat because he wanted to save the food. One evening, as they rested beneath a rocky ledge, Kifo spoke without looking up. "We can't keep running forever, right?" Zhao looked down at him. "We're not running." Kifo shook his head. "I mean from him. Zin. He's not going away." Zhao didn't answer right away, because the cub was right. Zin was patient, and angry, and smart. "I know," Zhao finally said. "But he doesn't understand something." "What?" "We're not alone anymore." Kifo tilted his head. "Just us two, though." Zhao looked past him, toward the stars, toward the open land. "For now," he said. "But not for long. Because Zhao wasn't going to just survive. He was going to build something. Something Zin couldn't scare." Zhao started with the forgotten. He and Kifo moved farther than usual each day, walking through dry valleys, over cracked ridges, and across abandoned waterholes, not looking for prey, but for others like them. Strays, outcasts, the ones who'd been pushed aside or left behind. Not every lion gets to grow up in a pride. Some, like Zhao once was, are forced to figure out life alone. He found one on the 4th day. A young lioness, thin and cautious, hiding near the rocks with a gash across her shoulder. She snarled when they approached, baring teeth like broken glass. Kifo stepped behind Zhao instinctively, but Zhao didn't show dominance. He didn't growl. He just sat down and said gently, "We're not here to take anything from you." The lioness blinked, confused. "I was you once," Zhao continued. "Wounded. Alone. I thought no one would care if I died." Her growl softened just slightly. Still watching, still unsure. Then Kifo stepped forward and said, "He's not lying. He doesn't let people go hungry, not even me." It took time. Hours, not minutes. But finally the lioness crept closer. Her name was Misa. She'd been separated from her pride during a fight with hyenas. She didn't know where they were anymore. Maybe dead, maybe far away. She didn't know how to hunt well, and she hadn't eaten in 2 days. Zhao gave her the remains of their last kill, no questions asked. By nightfall, she was lying beside them. The next day, they found 2 brothers, scrappy, half-starved, covered in old bite marks. Suspicious, aggressive, but curious. Zhao let them circle, let them size him up. He didn't need to prove anything. He'd learned that from the elephants. Presence was more powerful than performance. By the end of the week, there were 6 of them. 6 lions. Young, damaged, forgotten by the world. None of them had a home, but they had found something better. A place where survival didn't require betrayal. Zin noticed. His spies, scavenger hyenas, desperate birds, even a few jackals, reported, "Back. More lions," they said. "They're forming something." Zin smiled at first. "Good," he muttered. More to break. But inside, he felt it. That tight squeeze in his gut. He knew what it meant when the abandoned started gathering. It meant something bigger was forming, something stronger than fear. So, he made his next move. One morning, Misa woke up to find the remains of a zebra nearby. It hadn't been there the night before. It was fresh, untouched, too clean. Zhao's stomach twisted. He sniffed the air. The meat wasn't poisoned, but it wasn't a gift either. It was bait. Kifo stepped close. "Zin." Zhao nodded. "He's trying to tempt us. Divide us." They didn't touch the zebra. That night they moved camp. Zhao knew what Zin was doing, playing the long game, setting traps, testing them. But they weren't scattered loners anymore. They were a unit. Still rough, still learning, still scarred, but united. And for the first time, Zhao began to imagine what they could become, not just a group of broken lions helping each other survive, but a new kind of pride. One not built on dominance or bloodlines. One built on choice. Zin, somewhere in the shadows, chewed at a bone and stared into the firelight of the moon. "They think they're building something," he growled. "Let them." His eyes narrowed. "When I tear it down, it'll hurt more." Zin didn't wait this time. He struck 2 nights later. The attack was sudden. Silent at first, then all teeth and screams. It came just before dawn, when the night was starting to thin, when creatures let their guard down. Hyenas burst from every side, snarling like demons, coordinated and savage. Not just his core pack now, Zin had called in deaths. Half-wild rogues, outcasts like Zhao's pride, but twisted by hatred instead of hope. It was chaos in seconds. Misa leapt up with a roar, slashing at a hyena's throat before it could sink its teeth into her leg. Blood sprayed. One of the brothers was dragged by 3 hyenas toward the rocks, but Zhao lunged, slamming into them with full force, teeth sinking into one's spine, crushing bone. Kifo stood frozen. It was the sound, the screaming. It wasn't. Like the noise of hunting or fear. It was the sound of something being taken apart. "Move!" Zhao shouted. That snapped him out of it. Kifo ducked behind Misa, who shielded him without question, taking on 2 attackers at once. Zin appeared through. The dust, calm and slow like always. He walked, not ran, stepping between bodies like he already owned the space. His eyes locked on Zhao's. "This is what your hope bought you?" he asked. "Look around. It's still the same world. You build, I burn. That's how it's always been." Zhao stood firm, sides heaving, mouth bloody. "You're wrong. This isn't the same world." Zin's lips curled. "Then let me show you how it ends." He pounced. The fight wasn't fair. Zin was stronger, heavier, faster. Zhao was still healing. His leg flared with pain as he dodged the first strike. The second hit him in the ribs and he felt something crack, but he didn't go down. He circled, not retreating, controlling. Zin came again, this time lower, trying to go for the throat, but Zhao wasn't alone this time. Tembo's roar broke through the madness like a drum. The ground thundered. From the edge of the chaos, over the ridge where the hyenas had first burst in, came the one thing Zin hadn't counted on. Elephants. Not just Lumo. Not just 3. There were 5 now. Maybe more. Huge, unstoppable. Silent fury in motion. Lumo led them. And when she saw Zhao bloodied, she didn't wait for permission. She charged. Zin turned just in time to leap away, but not far enough. Lumo's tusk grazed his side, ripping flesh open like it was paper. He screamed, scrambling away, his confidence finally cracking. The elephants didn't chase random hyenas. They came for him. Tembo stormed through the fight, scattering attackers. With sheer weight, Sina reached Misa and Kifo and stood between them like a wall. The battle didn't last long after that. Hyenas are savage, but they're not stupid. The moment they saw the tide turn, they fled. Zin's reinforcements scattered into the grass. The chaos dissolved. Zin limped, dragging his hind leg, leaving a trail of blood behind him. He didn't speak. He didn't threaten. He just ran. The silence afterward was painful. Zhao collapsed. Tembo reached him first, using his trunk to lift him slightly, keep him breathing. Zhao didn't speak. He didn't need to. He looked around, saw Kifo alive, Misa, still standing, the brothers tending to each other. A few wounds, a few bruises, but no one dead. They'd held, not because they were the strongest, because they were united. Lumo stood beside Zhao again, her trunk resting lightly on his back, and this time, when he looked up at her, he didn't feel like a cub. He felt like a leader. They didn't celebrate. There was no roaring victory, no triumph call into the sky. Only silence. Only the deep, tired breathing of lions who had survived again, against the odds, against fear, and against the thing that haunted them most, doubt. Zhao lay still for a long time after the fight. Tembo hadn't left his side, and Lumo stood guard, a few paces away, her presence as constant as the sky. His ribs ached with every breath. His leg pulsed with fire, but none of that mattered. They were alive, and Zin was gone. Kifo curled up beside him, the cub's tiny body trembling as the last of the adrenaline drained out of him. Zhao rested his paw over him, gently, protectively. "You did good," he whispered. "I didn't fight," Kifo replied, ashamed. "You stayed," Zhao said. "That's harder sometimes." And it was true. He knew fear more intimately than he knew strength. He'd lived in it, drowned in it, risen from it. He had learned the difference between pretending to be brave and actually choosing to face the thing that might kill you. That's what Kifo had done. The pride gathered close as the sun began to rise. Misa had a limp now, too. One of the brothers had a torn ear, the other a deep scratch along his flank. They were all marked, but more than anything, they were still here. Zhao stood with effort, leaning on Tembo for a moment before taking a few shaky steps forward. He looked at the small group of lions, young, damaged, brave. Then at the elephants who had saved them twice. And finally, he looked out toward the land ahead. It was time to stop running. "We build now," he said. Misa tilted her head. "Build what?" "A real pride. One that protects instead of abandons. One that remembers what it's like to be alone. The others listened, quiet. No one questioned him. They didn't have to. The truth was written in their eyes, in the scars they bore, in the blood that still dried on their fur. This pride wouldn't be about power, it would be about healing. Tembo rumbled in approval, and Lumo gave a slow, deep nod. One of respect, not ownership. She hadn't stepped in to take over. She'd stepped in to give him the chance to become what he was always meant to be, a leader, not by force, but by example. They moved that afternoon. Not far, just to higher ground where the view was wide and clean. Zhao wanted to see everything, to know when danger came. But more than that, he wanted a place to begin, a home. They dug into routines quickly. Misa scouted. The brothers patrolled. Kifo learned to track. Yao stayed close, guiding with his eyes, with soft words, with quiet gestures. They weren't perfect. They were still learning, but they were becoming something real. One night, as stars filled the sky and a quiet wind swept over the land, Kifo asked a question that stuck in Zhao's chest. Will he come back? Xin Zhao didn't answer right away. He looked out toward the far hills, the dark line where earth met sky. Yes, he said finally. He might. Kifo looked afraid again. Then what do we do? Zhao didn't flinch. He didn't look away. We'll be ready, not to fight him, but to remind him he can't break what we've built. Kifo nodded, still not fully understanding, but he trusted Zhao. That was enough. The wind carried no scent of hyena that night, no threat, just the promise of something long overdue. Peace. But Zhao knew peace wasn't something you found, it was something you defended. And for the first time, he wasn't defending just himself. He was defending family. Weeks passed, not without trouble, not without fear, but without Xin. The new pride grew, not in size, but in bond. Every scarred lion that had once been on the edge of survival now had a role, a rhythm. Misa taught Kifo to hunt in silence. The brothers, once reckless, learned patience as they patrolled in wide circles around their new territory. Zhao no longer had to watch every shadow. They all did that now, together, and Zhao changed too. He spoke more. Not loudly, not like a king, demanding attention, but like a lion who had something worth saying. When others were scared, he listened. When someone got hurt, he helped without hesitation. He remembered what it felt like to be alone, so he made sure no one else in the pride ever felt that again. One evening, Kifo caught his first prey alone, a young hare. It wasn't much, but he brought it back proudly, tail high. The pride didn't mock the small size. They celebrated, because every step forward mattered. As night fell, they gathered on the high ridge. The stars were clear. The land below was quiet. I don't hear hyenas anymore, Kifo said, lying beside Zhao. Zhao nodded slowly. They know we're not prey. Now, do you think Xin is still alive? Zhao paused, then answered honestly. Yes, but he's not the same threat anymore. Why? Because he's still alone, Zhao said. And we're not. That truth echoed in the silence. The strength of what they'd built wasn't in their claws or roars. It was in their unity. But peace doesn't erase the past. Late that same night, a sound broke the quiet. Distant, stumbling footsteps. Not a threat, not an ambush, but something wounded, something familiar. Zhao stood quickly, ears sharp. Misa joined him. The brothers flanked him without a word. From the darkness came a broken shape. A lioness, older, ribs showing, face gaunt with exhaustion. She collapsed before she even reached them. Kifo rushed forward. She's alone. Zhao approached slowly. Her breathing was weak, her eyes dull with pain. She looked up at him, terrified. I'm not here to take anything, she rasped. Just needed water. Just water. Zhao crouched beside her. You're safe. The words felt heavy. Real. The lioness flinched. I've been chased. For days. Hyenas. Led by something bigger than them. Something cruel. Zhao's muscles tensed. Zin, still hunting, still wounding, still alive. Where? Zhao asked. East, she whispered. He controls the old valley now. No one passes through without blood. Zhao looked at the pride around him, watching, waiting. They'd heard the stories, and now they had a choice. Ignore it. Stay safe, or face the one thing they all feared. Zhao stood. He's hurting others now, he said, and it's not just about us anymore. Misa narrowed her eyes. You want to go after him? I want to stop him. One of the brothers stepped forward. And if we fail? Zhao looked him straight in the eye. Then at least we won't be the kind of lions who watched and did nothing. No one argued, because they weren't just survivors anymore. They were a pride, and their strength wasn't in how many they could kill, it was in how many they could protect. They left at dawn. No speeches, no drama, just quiet steps, steady and sure, led by a lion who had once been left to die. Zhao moved at the front, not because he demanded to, but because everyone else trusted him to. Behind him came Misa, the brothers, and Kifo, who had grown into something more than a cub. He was still small, still learning, but his eyes held a fire that couldn't be dimmed anymore. They moved east, toward the valley the old lioness had spoken of, the one Zin had claimed. It didn't take long to find signs of him. Bones stripped, clean, trees marked with deep scratches, the stink of fear baked into the dirt. Zin wasn't hiding anymore. He was daring them to come, and they did. The final meeting wasn't some glorious blood-soaked battle. It was messy, it was brutal, and it was real. Zin waited alone at the center of the old valley, his frame gaunt, one leg still dragging from Lumo's tusk. He didn't look afraid. He looked angry, hollow. You came, he spat as Zhao stepped forward. I had to. Zin sneered. Why? For revenge? No, Zhao said. For closure. Zin laughed bitterly. You think killing me makes you a king? No, Zhao replied. I think stopping you means others don't have to live the life I did. And then it began. Zin charged, a blur of rage. Zhao met him halfway. The impact was savage. Claws tore, teeth snapped, blood spilled. But it wasn't like before. Zhao didn't fight to survive anymore. He fought to protect. Behind him, the pride stood firm, ready, steady. Kifo held back Misa when she moved to join, whispering, He has to finish this. And Zhao did. It didn't take long. Zin's strength was fading, held together by hatred and pride. Yao's strength had been rebuilt bone by bone, scar by scar, by love and loyalty. Zin lay on the ground, heaving, broken. Zhao stood over him. He didn't kill him. He walked away, because Zin had already lost the only thing he ever truly needed. Fear. No one feared him anymore. Not even the lion he left bleeding years ago. The pride turned their backs to him and walked out of the valley, leaving Zin with nothing but silence. And that was how it ended. Not with a roar, but with peace. They returned to their land days later, tired but stronger than ever. The lioness they had saved was still waiting. Others had come too, drawn by whispers of a pride that didn't turn its back on the broken. Zhao stood on the ridge, Kifo by his side, Misa and the others watching the horizon. He looked down at the pride forming below him. Not perfect, not polished, but real, and he smiled. Because this wasn't just survival. This was legacy. If this story moved you, let's talk about it. Drop a comment. What part hit you the hardest? What moment made you hold your breath? And if you want more powerful stories like this, about resilience, unity, and rising from the ashes, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's keep building this pride, one story at a time. Thanks for reading. Stay brave, stay kind, stay wild.